Hi, everyone. Welcome to this virtual village of women from all over the world. We're gathered here to share powerful stories of birth and transition into motherhood as a means to empower each other through storytelling. I'm Bibi Lorenzetti, and I'm here today with Magnolia Zuniga. She's based
Hi.
in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Hi, Magnolia.
Hi.
Welcome. Thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
being here.
Thank you.
I'm going to let you introduce yourself as I know you wear many hats. So please go ahead and tell us about you.
Let's see. So I'm Magnolia Zuniga and I'm in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And I moved here to study Ayurvedic medicine, which has always been a passion of mine. And that's it. I have a toddler, so I'm really knee deep into this. Just finished potty training and going through all of these. My cat.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I'm
How old
telling
is
you,
she?
I felt like such a superwoman.
I bet.
I was, yeah. Oh my God. Yeah.
How old
She'll
is
be
she?
she'll be 3 on Halloween.
Okay.
Hi, Lionel. This is Lionel here.
Hi, Lionel. Welcome.
He's very sweet. Yeah, so I'm just, I'm back in school. I'm a student. I did have an Ashtanga. Sorry, is that his butthole in the camera?
That's okay. We embrace it all here.
Yeah, right. I had a yoga school, an Ashtanga Mysore yoga school in San Francisco, but then closed that and then moved here so I could go back to school. And I've been in school for a couple years and I have another few years to go. And yeah, that's it
That
in a
must be
nutshell.
a big workload to manage a toddler and study and go to school.
Um, yeah, it is, especially with COVID. I mean, before, when I was in school, I had we had help, someone coming and taking care of Artemis for a few hours during the day, and then I would come home and then take over. But then with COVID, um, you know, that additional help went away, and then there's no preschool, no like daycares, and so then I had to switch from in-person classes here in Albuquerque. We moved from California. And so I had to then enroll to a school that had online courses, ironically, in California. So, so I sort of kept the same Ashtanga teaching schedule in that then I started waking up at about 3:30 in the morning to
Wow.
study and do my little yoga meditation practice and then study and then, watch my daughter from 9 to 5. And then my husband watches her once he's done from 5 to 6. And then I study for that hour. And then it's, bath and then bedtime. And then I'm in bed with a toddler.
Wow.
So then COVID has made it very busy and full on. But then also at the same time, it's been a great bonding experience to be with her during these, such huge milestone transitions that she's gone through, like learning to walk and all of these things. So it's been as difficult and as challenging as it's been for us. Luckily my husband, Brad, and I are, we really enjoy each other's company. We're in a really good place. And these transitions were relatively, stable, some bumps here and there, but it was pretty good. So
That's
no
amazing.
complaints.
Yeah, I feel like these kids are, there's such a silver lining of like,
Now,
you don't know if they should socialize more, but also such a great bonding experience for, the whole
yeah.
household. So it's really.
Yeah. I mean, she recently started socializing and seeing other children. And I was a little worried that, there would be some social, just difficulties, but she's really been adapting well now that we're,
That's
coming
great.
back from lockdown.
That's good to hear. I'm sure for me and for a lot of other women listening to this.
Yeah.
So that's really good. So when was she supposed to arrive Earthside?
Her due date, I think it was like November. It was the first week, I think like November 6th or something. But she ended up being breech. I turned her breech in headstand in Shirshasana.
Oh.
And yeah, I was about 5.5 months. Yeah. It was really painful and I knew she flipped and I was like,
so you felt the
oh,
process
absolutely. It was painful.
Wow.
And I immediately came down and I called, I talked to my midwife, and yeah, she was breech. And I tried, both my husband and I tried everything under the sun to get her to turn again.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. And it didn't happen. So I ended up having a C-section, and
At how many months?
She just a week before her due date.
Okay.
So it was like 39 weeks. So, and that was actually kind of like, it was kind of there was also a silver lining in that too. I mean, the thing with yoga is that, I was following Patabi Joyce's recommendation. He always recommended doing Shirshasana up until the day you give birth. And I believe Geeta Iyengar, in her book, A Gem for Women, which is, fantastic, she also suggests that if it's already been a part of your practice, to just continue doing it.
Yeah.
I know my obstetrician was like, no. My midwife was like, well, it's up to you, but like, I think it's also kind of a delicate time to be a midwife or a doula, because, I mean, try telling me, a pregnant woman, what to do, like I was not having anything, I was on my own path.
Did
so
you
it was
feel like you also had an attachment to the practice as you knew it at that point, to your asana practice?
I mean, there was, yeah, I think it's really hard not to. I think when you get far into the practice and you really explore what the physical body can do and you really test its limits, I think it's hard to kind of let go of that and be like, okay, now I'm just going to be super chill. I mean, I find Ashtanga yoga I consider Ashtanga practitioners to be athletes. In a lot of ways, even though the competitiveness is not supposed to be there, et cetera. But it's just sort of the human mind. And when we start to really explore the physical body like that, it comes along with other attachments, like,
absolutely,
wanting to be this badass, pregnant woman that can do it all. You know what I mean? Which,
and I think that's true it's relatable even if you don't have an Ashtanga practice, whether you're a runner or a climber or like any kind of thing that you do before you're pregnant. It's hard if you have that fire. It's hard to let it go.
So while I didn't like consciously, I thought I was really slowing things down. I really did believe, Patabi Joyce and Geeta. Not saying not to believe them, but it was like, now stepping back and studying Ayurvedic medicine, Ayurveda says absolutely no inversions during pregnancy because you could turn the baby breech. Now looking back, I was like, oh, well, as well-intentioned as this advice is there any medical training behind this? Like, are there, what are, I think back, like, why did I do that? You know what I mean? Like, why? And I think a lot of us have and continue to do that, of like, yoga teachers, giving them a lot of authority over our bodies. And, but I don't know how
like
yoga teacher trainings are now.
Right.
Well, I intuitively was going along with what I knew, which was the practice. I was into like 20 plus years of daily practice. So, it's a mixed bag. But now that I'm studying yoga from the medicinal side and learning what it really does to the nervous system and the endocrine system and just, all of it, I can look back like, why did I give so much authority to well-intentioned people? Certainly, but I guess I wish I had been more, I feel like there needs to be a balance between intuition and medical awareness. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, but all that said, at the same time, her being breech was a really, really good thing. And me having a C-section was a really good thing, primarily because that time that I made a decision, like after trying for like a month and a half, every day of doing everything under the sun to turn her, and she would turn and then turn back, you know? And so my midwife and I, sometimes we'd be able to kind of massage her, and then she'd be like, okay. And then, you know, she'd just flip back, and I was like, oh, this girl, you know? And so, you know, acupuncture, and, you know, and it was just really sweet. You know, the acupuncturist that I was working with, this doctor, he was like, okay, now this always works every time. And it just did not work, you know? And so I finally decided, and I told my midwife, I said, I'm not going to try to turn her anymore. I'm just going to go get it. I'm just going to schedule a C-section, and just, that's it. And she at first was like, well, why? You know, you can still keep trying. I said, I don't know. I'm going to give her this one. Like, I have plenty of time to battle my will with this girl. I'm going to pick my battles, and this is not going to be one of them. Like, maybe something is happening in there that I don't know about. You know, she knows what's happening in there, so I'm just going to leave it. It's
That's a wonderful way to look at it. I love that.
It's stressing me out, stressing my husband out, because it was like, okay, let's do exercises. You know, he's like, okay. So so that time allowed me to kind of research C-sections, and my midwife told me about what's called a gentle C-section, where you can kind of, you know, and so then I had this insurance where, you know, everything had to go through my gynecologist, like any questions that I had for the obstetrics department and labor and delivery had to go through my gynecologist.
Okay.
And so, and that was, she was kind of like filtering me and being like, you know, she was sort of gaslighting me, like, okay, that's not unnecessary. You don't have to bother, you know? And I was like, okay, so I let her go, so to speak. And that made it so in the system of the insurance of the hospital, I didn't have a primary care doctor. So it made it so that I was my own sort of advocate. So I could contact different obstetricians that were scheduled for that week. And I interviewed, there were 3 possibilities. I interviewed all 3 of them. And I wanted to find out like how flexible they would be with my desires for my birth plan, you know. And I finally found one that was pretty flexible, and we started negotiating. It was really funny. We actually started negotiating. I was like, I want this, you know, I want to cut the umbilical cord much later, you know, and she was like, oh, well, you know, like how later? And I was like, 30 minutes. She's like, no. She's like, I can't, like, I'll lose my job. I was like, okay, like, how much can you give me? You know, she's like 30 seconds. And I was like, 5 minutes. And she's like, oh, you know, so we just went back and forth, and we settled on a minute, you know, which was
it's a win. It's a win.
Totally. I was like, I'll take it. And then I was
love
like,
that you started with 30 minutes and just like 30 seconds.
I know. Oh my God, I know. And I also, you know, this was what I was working with. So, and then another one of my terms or conditions or whatever was, I wanted immediate skin to skin. And she said, you know, no, that's not possible. And she kind of explained it to me. I mean, a lot of it was like, I didn't know the procedure, the process. You know, she explained to me how the rooms are set up and where all the machines are, and why some of it is logistically not possible. And so, you know, you have the screen when you're getting a C-section, you have a screen,
right?
And, you know, the mom can't really see over. And so, you know, and she also explained to me that a lot of the times babies that are born C-section still have fluid in the lungs. And so they have to be taken to this separate area where they remove the fluid and get the baby to start breathing on its own, because usually through the contractions and traveling through the birth canal, that's what, you know.
Right.
And so I said, okay.
You're still pushing the baby out though with the cesarean, because your abdomen is still contracting.
I mean, I definitely could feel it when she was sort of
Yeah.
airlifted out. It felt like, that's what I call it, sort of airlifting. But so she said, I'll tell you what. She said, for that minute before we cut the umbilical cord, I'll rest her on your abdomen. So she'll have skin to skin that way. She said, I'll begin counting down from 60 seconds, looking at the calendar, looking at the clock. And she said, but that is only if the baby comes out, breathing. If the baby
Right.
does not come out breathing, then we're going to have to snip and take her immediately to the table, which is on the other side of the room. And I'm like, can you move that table? She's like, no. Okay. It's plugged into the wall. It's like staying there, Anyway, so long story short, we finally went through all these negotiations. This woman was just like, she was amazing. I just love her to death. And then when we got that day, she was like, well, you're going to have to talk to the pediatrician that's going to be in the room, because he's going to have to be the one to make the decision whether or not there's just multiple people in the room that are monitoring the situation.
Yeah.
And so he comes into my room like this, and I'm like, so.
As one would want to encounter someone in the room.
Exactly. Like talk about comfort, talk about trust and comfort, So I'm talking to him, and I'm all dressed up, ready to go and get the shot, which I was really scared of. And, he comes at me with arms crossed and like a wide stance. And
was your partner in the room with you at that point?
He was, and so was my midwife, but they knew I had it. So I said, I want immediate skin to skin, and I don't want the baby bathed or her temperature taken or anything of that. All can wait. I want immediate skin to skin. And he's like, well, if the baby is not, breathing, then no. And I said, okay, how about if the baby comes out screaming, you immediately put her on my chest? And he was like, and I'm like, it makes perfect sense. There's absolutely no reason why, if the, and he's like, fine. He's like, fine. And he just like left the room. And I was like, okay. So, I was talking to Artemis and I was like, girl, you got to come out screaming. Like you just got to come out screaming, And sure enough, she came out screaming, like fists in the air, screaming. And, she was laid on my abdomen, and she counted down, the doctor counted down for the 1 minute that we had. And then they cut the umbilical cord, and then they put her on my chest. And
so then they did put her on the chest after.
Yeah, because she was breathing and she was fine. So they did put her on the chest. But in retrospect, I was like really nauseous and it was, I was like, oh my God, what is this? So overwhelming. And I just didn't really know what to do. But it was all really really great. And then one of the reasons that I say that it was good that I had a C-section is because later my midwife was like, oh, can I take your placenta? And I was like, yeah, sure. And she went to look at it. Her and my obstetrician were both standing there looking at the placenta. And they both were like, I remember looking at my midwife's face, and she was like, like her eyes wide and her jaw kind of dropped. And I said, what's going on? And she said, your placenta is like seriously calcified.
Oh, wow.
And I said, well, what does that mean? And she said, it means that you would never have been able to give a natural birth. She's like, if we had tried to do it at home, we would have rushed you to the hospital to have an emergency C-section. And she was like,
oh, because you were going to do it at home. I was
going to do it at home. I had a midwife.
Okay.
Yeah. The plan was to do it at home.
Midwife.
Yeah. But I also had told my midwife, I'm really flexible. Like if it goes one way or the other, like I'm not attached to this. I just want a healthy baby, and I want to survive. And, so she was there mostly, as a support. And that was really important. And she said, it wouldn't have happened. We would have rushed you to the hospital to have an emergency C-section.
So that's amazing that you had that feeling of whenever they were trying to turn her, at some point you were like, she's giving me a message. She just wants to
Totally.
be. I feel like that's so important for women to hear, because sometimes we're so like set in our own plan that we forget to communicate with baby and remember that it's about both of us, not just our plan.
Yeah.
So that's amazing that you had that moment of.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if it was really like, you know, I just didn't want to mess with her anymore.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't want to like, it felt like I was messing with her at a certain point, and like I was messing with nature, you know, and you know, I was born C-section. I didn't really have anything against it other than, you know, it's not the healthiest, but it is necessary sometimes. So
yeah.
yeah,
I
so it
love that
all
you
was
went
good.
from like that whenever you decided, you still took time to make a new birth plan and try to get it your way. I feel like that's so empowering for women to hear, because often you feel like, oh, well, since my original plan is not happening, I'm just going to give up. But no, you were like, you saw clearly that it was still your birth and that you'd still try to get it your way. And that's so great.
Yeah, I mean,
you
you really,
that.
I feel like it's such a problem with the way in which, you know, we birth children here is like women just aren't advocates. They can't be advocates. You know, they really need so much support. And when you're in that position, you know, you're so vulnerable and you need so much help. And I just hear a lot of stories about women just, you know, wanting to having things done to them in ways or you know that they didn't want or they didn't ask for, et cetera. And it's really scary. So yeah, I'm interested to hear about how the other women's birth stories from, you know, that you're talking to, because I'd love to know how it happens in other countries.
Yeah. I think that's the most interesting thing of this, because you know, I've just started working in the birth world, and I see it, you know, like I see how everyone has their plan and the woman is just kind of like left to the side. Everyone wants to get their way, and they care about the health of the baby so that they can walk away feeling like they did their job, and the woman is just forgotten in the past. And it's, you know, it's, I love to look at birth art from like, you know, the ancient Greek or even just like the Hindu tradition and the Mayans. And it's just always all these women gathered around the woman. And it, you can tell like the woman is the divinity. She's like, she's God. She's bringing life into the world. And we're so far from that. It's so very upsetting. But it's so great to see women like fighting for themselves to have that, you know, because we can have it. It's in our right.
I saw an opportunity to like, okay, well now I can research and I can learn more about this and educate myself and see what, you know, what can I do? And my midwife did give me a really good book on gentle cesareans. So it's absolutely possible. It's just a matter of finding the right team that'll work with you. And that has its challenges, certainly.
Absolutely. And then how was your recovery after the cesarean? So she came out, they put her on her belly first and they put her on your chest. And then did you breastfeed her? What was your breastfeeding plan?
Oh my God. Oh, Bibi. This is something else I didn't know about, was breastfeeding. Oh, you know, everyone's like, oh, 2-3 days, like no problem. And it took me a month for my milk to come in.
Okay.
A whole month of like pumping nonstop. And, you know, and I mean, it finally came in and then I started breastfeeding, but it was a month where it was really stressful. And, you know, that doesn't help when you, you know, that dries, you know, it dries out the ducts in the breast. So you need to not be stressed. But then at the same time, you have this, at least with a C-section, you know, I've been sliced in half. You know, I'm trying to keep this little being alive. I have no idea what I'm doing. You know, it's my first baby. It's, you know, and you feeding them every couple of hours, which is actually every hour and a half. So you're not sleeping. How can you not get stressed? You know, you're so sleep deprived. So it was really kind of a mind-bending thing for me. It was like, okay, if I'm going to produce milk, I can't be stressed. But yet, you know, here we are. So,
well, and also it's so, you know, there is the stress hormones are being produced because part of the whole journey is like,
absolutely,
we're like animals. We have to protect and shield the baby. So naturally that brings on stress hormones, and that overrides the sex hormones. It's this whole
That's right.
intertwined play of let me protect, but let me also chill while I'm protecting.
Yeah. Yeah, right. Yeah. And it was, it was my husband and I and our midwives. And I wish we would have invited our moms to come, or my husband and I just thought, oh, we got this, but really we needed help.
Yeah.
That's always like, I mean, I'm an only child and so is my husband. So we just kind of have that mentality, like, yeah, we can do this, like, but really, yeah, we really, in retrospect, I would have liked, and that's always now what I recommend with my friends or something, is if you can get, even if they drive you a little crazy, like, it's just worth it. You might get a couple hours of extra sleep, and believe me, that's just golden, So we had donor breast milk for that first month. This woman was incredible and really amazing and just overproducing.
That's
And then
we're able to get that instead of formula. That's wonderful.
yeah,
And the baby took well to her milk?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it was really just kind of extraordinary. And then my milk finally came in, and then, we were on our way.
Good for you for not giving up, because women out there, you really need to hear this. I feel like it takes such love to not give up, when you're so frustrated that you don't see it coming, and to just keep going no matter what, because I've also seen nurses and lactation consultants just being like, just go to formula, it's not for you. So it's so great to hear someone say, like, it did come in. The efforts
did come in, yeah. And I was taking like all the Ayurvedic herbs, which are what herbs, my midwife recommended. It's Western herbs that are used in midwifery. Sounds like they're exactly the same that are used in Ayurvedic medicine. But I did prepare for pregnancy through Panchakarma. Both my husband and I did, because I sort of knew that if I was ever going to, I never wanted kids until I turned like 44. And then I like woke up one day and I was like, babies. Like I just became this like manic woman about babies. My husband would be like, what do you want for dinner? I'd be like, baby. We need to talk about babies like right now. And, but before that, I had gone to my doctor in India and I said, I would like to do treatments in case I choose to get pregnant when I'm older, because I know that, technically speaking, once you're past 35, it gets harder. And then as, each year progresses. So I did a couple of Panchakarmas, which are like, do you know what a Panchakarma is?
I do, but it would be nice for others to hear. They might not be familiar with it.
So Panchakarma is a purification or like a detox cleansing process that's specific to Ayurvedic medicine. And it's basically under doctor supervision, and it's a lipid mediated detox that helps remove fat soluble toxins from the cells. So it's when done properly, and if the practitioner also follows the guidelines, which are kind of strict and can be annoying for some, then it can be really really effective. And it just removes any potential toxins, like I said, from the cells. So, because I had been told that I would never be able to carry to term. I had been pregnant 3 other times before. And so even though I was never given a reason why, that's my clearest memory, is like, yeah, you can get pregnant, but you're never going to be able to carry all the way. And so that was always kind of in the back of my mind. And so my doctor and I prepared that. And then my husband went and did a Panchakarma as well, focusing on his reproductive, his sperm count and motility. And so then when it came to us actually wanting to try, it happened right away, even though we're both the same age, 44. So it happened right away. So that also, helped, but later in being able to produce breast milk. But it was hard. And I definitely wanted to give up, but I'm just kind of one of those people that like, I'll put my one foot in front of the other and I just kind of stick with it until it comes to fruition. So that's not really difficult for me, but what was difficult was the sense of like failure, the sense of like, well, it's supposed to happen in 2 or 3 days. What's wrong with my body? What's wrong with me? Why am I, you know what I mean? You can't help but sort of feel that way. And, but
there's a lot that comes with that like feeling like you're failing your job as a mother, even though we never fail our job as a mother because we're always trying in some way or form. Of course, sometimes there's limitations, but within what we can. So it's so easy to feel like a failure as a mom.
I know. And I'm realizing that never really goes away.
Yeah.
It's just sort of varying degrees.
I've heard that from other mothers.
Yeah.
But it's good to have moments like this to like look back on or hear other mothers say it, because then you're like, okay,
right.
I have to look at it objectively and see that I am doing all in my power, So.
But now I also like my girlfriend, recently she was like struggling with her supply, and I just, I remember being stressed and really like hyper focused, and then feeling like, a little formula is not going to be the end all, to supplement with a little formula. That's not going to be, and we have generations of people raised on formula. I mean, maybe we're not the healthiest, but anyway, that's another thing.
Like I'm not an Ayurvedic expert by any means, but I've definitely always worked with a practitioner, and it was a big part of my preparation as well. And I feel like I love the concept of Ayurveda of like, if something doesn't work, you focus on what does work and you just give it your all for that, and everything else kind of reassembles itself. And I love that because, even though she might not, a baby might not be getting the breast milk, if she's getting love, and if she's getting like the cuddling, and if she's getting all the other things, then, it makes up for what's missing, So I feel like you're so right. We can get so fixated about things, and then really it's in the scheme of the whole journey of life.
Right.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Just the other elements are there. And so how did you recover from, the surgery, and then how did you slowly how was your transition into becoming a mother?
Well, physically, the C-section was really hard on my body. I mean, it probably took me about 6 months to sort of feel a little bit like myself, I started doing a little bit of yoga again, but it just was like not feeling right. It was after Me Too and after all of this. So not only was it not feeling right in my body physically, it wasn't feeling right like in my mind and in my heart to continue to do that practice. Because, my cat might be crying to get out soon. So, Me Too happened, and it was like, I was pretty active in it when it came out, when the victims came forward to say that Patappi Joyce had sexually assaulted them. I, spoke up within the community and I said, absolutely, this happened, and so I started with being like an active participant in it. And then I got pregnant, like kind of around that time. And then I started to take a step back, from being really super active in it. I mean, I was really aware that I was a geriatric pregnancy. And so I wanted to sort of manage my stress levels. And that was really stressful, what was happening in the Ashtanga community. And also seeing how the community was responding and reacting to the victims. That was probably more distressing to me than anything. And so, I'm pregnant while I'm also sort of processing all of this happening. And at the time, I didn't really see it that way. And just now, being a few years away from it, I'm starting to sort of see it with more clarity, the whole process and what happened at that time. But it really, when I was pregnant with her, it really allowed me to take the time to sort of better understand the community, better understand what happened, what I saw, what I witnessed, and better understand my role in it. And sort of like, so I'm there, I'm pregnant, and I'm just kind of taking all this in, and I'm processing the past about these events that I witnessed. And the thing is that, then in 2004, when I witnessed the assaults taking place, we didn't have the language. We didn't call it sexual assault. We called it inappropriate adjustments. We called it, dirty old man. We called it, one person was like, oh, he's kind of like the creepy uncle in your family that you just want to stay away from. And all the other girls in the family are like, don't, stay away from that uncle, or whoever is this male figure. And, I began to realize like how normalized in our society sexual assault is, that we have caricatures for these men in our lives. We have, so much so that it's just a part of every girl's lives, just a part of their upbringing. Most women that I speak to have had this person in their life as a child. And so we didn't have that language. We didn't have that understanding. And, when I saw it, I immediately was like, he's literally molesting women. Like, what is going on, And that happened the first day that I was at the Shala in India, that I witnessed that. And it was just 2004, it was rampant, it was everywhere. But also, like, because, he was kissing women on the lips, he was massaging and grabbing the buttocks during back bends. Like, it was just so everywhere that, I can absolutely see how someone would see that, and everyone's just kind of there going along with it, saying that, well, that's not sexual assault. I mean, if a woman doesn't want it, she just can say no. So I could sort of rationalize why this community was watching this and not really doing anything, and saying, okay, well, if the women don't like it, why are they still here?
Right.
And so then I left the Shala and I started practicing with Shara, and I told him, I'm only here because Pattabhi Jois touches women like this. And he was like, well, he didn't say anything. And so while I was practicing, I was only there for a month, but while I was practicing with Shara, I was like, I'm all the way here in India. I want to learn Ashtanga from the master of Ashtanga yoga. I'm all the way in India. Like, what can I do? How can I protect myself? What do I need to do? And so I started talking to a lot of the women in the community and just kind of getting different opinions, because I was like, am I wrong? Like, for feeling this way? And, I realized that some women enjoyed the attention, or would say, it was called the Mula Bandha check, oh, or, he doesn't touch my Mula Bandha anymore. Some women thought that it actually benefited their practice. And some women blew it off and said, oh, he's just, like I said, a dirty old man. It's a nuisance, but it's no big deal. And some women, like a good girlfriend of mine, felt immediately sexually violated and left the next day, and never came back. She had been there 2 days. So, at that time, it was like, well, if some women are feeling it like this and seeing it and experiencing it like this, who am I to say, no, you're being assaulted? Who am I to say your experience is wrong? And so it was that gray area that kept me practicing Ashtanga, and, then eventually to teaching it, was because there was that gray area for me and for everyone, I imagine. I don't know, but that was like, well, no one really knows. You know what I mean? No one really knows what's happening, and no one's perfect. And, the yoga's still good.
Right. And also what you might feel in terms of your relationship to the practice. I would imagine, like, it's hard to put everything in place whenever the practice is working for you, even though it might
Right.
work for you at a certain moment. But in that moment, it seems like it had a positive, you were experiencing something that was worth having the
I
practice independent of the teacher.
Right, because it was independent. And I also think when I watched this happening, I was standing in the foyer. I wasn't practicing myself. I was standing in the foyer and it happened right there. And then it was just right. And I was, I wasn't practicing and sort of in my own body. I was watching and observing it happening. And I was like, holy shit,
Right.
And so
So do you feel like you're like in the time that you were pregnant, and do you feel like that's kind of gave you a chance to kind of process the whole thing and see it from a different lens?
sort of, but it took a long time. I mean, like, well, so then what I did is then I was like, okay, I'm going to confront him and I'm going to tell him not to touch me like this, and I did. And finally, after some back and forth, he agreed not to. And then, the next day, he said, you come take practice, no problem, no touching. And I said, no touching. And he said, no touching. And I said, okay. So then I come back the next day to the shala. And then in backbends, he comes and he grabs my butt. And I grabbed his hand. I put my finger in his face and I grabbed his hand and I said, no, don't touch me like that. And he grabbed my finger and he said, yes, that is correct. And so, and then I remember this friend of mine was practicing next to me and he said, how does it feel to be the guru to your guru? And they like whispered that to me. And I said, shut up. I was like, what does that mean? That is correct. Are you saying that all women should be responding like this?
Mm.
Are you saying that, and obviously we didn't have these conversations. Even when I confronted him to not, touch me like that, his English was quite broken. And so I had to speak and kind of, some, conversations with him weren't very fluid, is my point. So then I just thought, I just need to protect myself and, just everyone, I have to do that. If people want to think that it's good and it's great, then that is fine.
Right.
So then I just, was separating the method from the man, and that's what got me through 20 plus years of the practice, and then later opening my school and teaching this to people. In the meantime, I was really open about what I witnessed and what happened. I would talk to students about it regularly. I spoke to my friends about it and colleagues, and sometimes, the newer students that had never practiced with Patabi Joyce, they would contact me and ask me, I've heard rumors, is this true? And I would say it's absolutely true. But then while I was pregnant, it's sort of, I was talking to one of the victims about it, about her experience, and also talking to the community. And it was just over some time, I realized that there is no gray. My husband cannot go to the office tomorrow, grab every woman's butt. Some may like it. Some may, just do a little giggle and just go about their day. Some may, again, find it annoying and just, say whatever. And some may go to the police feeling sexually violated. It's still criminal behavior.
Right.
So it's not about the interpretation of the action. It really is simply criminal. And that became really clear to me. And, but it was a really slow process because I was also sort of trying to heal my body at the same time, and trying to, get milk and trying to learn how to keep this little creature alive, that is suddenly I'm just so madly in love with. And, it was just all this newness. And so then after she was born, then it became clear that there was just no separation for me. Like, you know, looking in her eyes and asking myself, what kind of a mother do you want to be? You know, what kind of a woman do you want to be? Who are you going to be for this child? You know, what are you going to explain to her when she's older of how you're making a living? You know, and I realized that like sexual predators, they can be a lot of things in the world. They can be artists, they can be architects, they can be musicians, but they will never be they will never be healers for me. You know, and as special as I thought the practice was, at the end of the day, it was like, you know, Ashtanga yoga, it's not curing cancer, it's not curing heart disease, it's not really the benefits of this practice I can gain from other yoga practices, because yoga generally is good.
Right.
You know, when people say, you know, like a friend of mine recently said, I still teach Mysore Ashtanga because the yoga is good. And it's like, yeah, no one's saying to stop watching TV shows or comedy because of Bill Cosby. You know what I mean? Like, no one's saying that.
Right.
But am I going to keep watching Bill Cosby? You know, no. Not only am I going to keep watching Bill Cosby, but am I going to watch him every day for 2 hours a day, 6 days a week, and have an altar to him? You know, I can't do that to myself anymore, because, you know, and yoga's teaching us this, you know, it's like living in right alignment with your integrity. And it was like, I'm not doing that. And I haven't been all along, if I'm really honest with myself. I knew what it was in the beginning. And I, you know, the community, you know, the older generation, when they enabled and protected Pattabhi Jois, they negotiated the health and the wellness of the women in the community for the possibility of esoterica, of some esoteric thing happening. And that is a really huge bargain. And that to me is the spirit of Ashtanga yoga. It's just simply embedded in that practice, and it cannot be separated from it. No matter how many mental gymnastics I went through, it was like at the end of the day, it's Pattabhi Jois's legacy. And so even before me too, you know, I spent a couple years, I was both inspired and irritated by Mark Singleton's book, The Yoga Body. And
on my shelf, I have, it's like 3 years it's on my shelf and I haven't gotten to it for some reason.
oh girl, you got to dig in.
I know.
I'm
distracted by all these other things.
There's a lot to do in this life, yeah. But I read it finally. I was like you, I had it on my shelf for many years, and then I finally read it, and I was really irritated by a lot of the suggestions and just a lot. And so I decided, you know, some of these people that Mark Singleton interviewed are in Mysore, so I'm going to go find them. I'm going to interview them myself. Like, what are we talking about here? So I spent a couple years, just a couple trips back and forth to Mysore, and it was a couple years total where I just sort of researched the history of Ashtanga yoga specifically. And I spoke with Mr. T.K. Sharma. He was a student of Krishnamacharya's at the same time that Pattabhi Jois and Mr. Iyengar were. And he was quite generous with his time with me. Because he was really upset at how his version had been represented in Mark Singleton's book. And so he wanted to somehow make it right. And so when I spoke to him, I really wanted to know just the history of Ashtanga yoga. I wanted to know, okay, this whole cave story and Yoga Karunta and all this whole mythology I love a mythology story. Like, I love a good narrative, you know? And before I embarked on this, I thought, well, Magnolia, if you find out that all of that's not true, you know, you have to be ready for that.
Right.
You know, you're barking up this tree, you have to be ready for what falls out, you know? So I was like, I'm fine with whatever. So it was through my conversations with him that it was clear that Krishnamacharya, he didn't teach Surya Namaskara or Surya Namaskara AB. For some reason, I had always thought that Surya Namaskara A and B had come from Krishnamacharya. But, I asked Mr. Sharma in multiple different ways, to the point that I actually sort of irritated him. I was demonstrating in his living room. I was like, this is Surya Namaskara. Hey, did you learn this? He's like, no, I told you no already. So, I was like, okay. So he didn't learn Surya Namaskara A and B. And then I was like, well, maybe classical Surya Namaskara, which is different than Surya Namaskara A and B. So then I demonstrated that. And he was like, no and no, lady, crazy lady. And so then I was like, okay. So then I was like, well, so then did Pattabhi Jois make up Surya A and B? So then, and then I asked Mr. Sharma, well, what about, was there any kind of system? Was there any kind of theory? Was there anything, he said, no. If you had a flexible back, you learned all the back bends. If you had flexible hips, you would learn all the ankle behind the head. He was like, we had to demonstrate. It was like, what can your body do? He made it sound like, he gave me the impression that it was all very like, a little fast and furious.
Okay.
And so then I was like, okay, interesting. So then I talked to Shrat and I said, where did Surya Namaskara A and B come from? And he said, Pattabhi Jois made it up. And I said, okay. And I didn't care then, I was like, whatever. And then I said, okay, so then what about the 4 series, 6 series? And Shrat explained to me that, 4th series was a collaboration between Krishnamacharya and Pattabhi Jois. And then that the 6th series that we know now that we practice today was done by Pattabhi Jois, but received blessings by Krishnamacharya to do so. And so I was like, okay. So then I left, and it was like, okay, well, so when you look at Krishnamacharya's book, his books, his work, there is some resemblance to, primary series, but like kind of no, right. Like sort of yes, sort of no, in the same way that they'll be, they're just yoga postures. So in the same way that you see the same yoga postures in any other yoga book. So I started to realize my intention was to write a book about the history of Ashtanga yoga. And then I realized that you can't write that book honestly without writing about the sexual assault and without writing about the way that that early generation protected him. And what I mean by protecting him is that, only certain photographers, videographers that were approved were allowed in the room, because the outside world was not going to understand. And so, this was how Pattabhi Jois was able to do this for decades. And gosh, that's a lot.
Well, I feel like I'm going to tie it back into the story of your postpartum journey, because I feel like, there's probably a lot of women that no matter what community they're in are going to have experienced or going to experience something of the sort. Hopefully less now, because it's all been uprooted and there's more language, like you're saying, about it, so that we can name it better. Like your daughter's generation, thanks to what you're doing, and other women that have gone through it are doing through this movement, are going to have so much more like ability to label it and to prevent situations like this, even though of course there will be other things that will happen for them.
That's my hope. And so then to tie it back to like, then with Artemis, my daughter, her name's Artemis, it was like, okay, I can't teach this anymore, because it was also like, okay, what are the statistics of women that are sexual assault survivors? It varies between anywhere from 1 in 3 to 1 in 6. So many of these women come to yoga for healing, either consciously or unconsciously, from sexual assault. So, and then based on that research that I did, it was like, okay, so, it really is primarily Pattabhi Jois. Krishnamacharya went on later to, after he left the Mysore Palace, to teach in a more individualized way. He didn't have this sort of prepackaged system. So, it really is Pattabhi Jois's legacy, more or less. Yes, Krishnamacharya is in there, but, so what? I'm going to teach these women that are survivors of sexual assault a practice, a healing practice developed by a sexual predator. It just became so twisted to me. It became like a type of twisted that I just couldn't spend another moment doing it, you know? And so that's when I closed the school. I decided to go back to school for Ayurvedic medicine, and then I stopped practicing. And you know, and then being with Artemis, it's also like, because I'm working with Artemis to heal her. I don't know if healing's the right word. I'm not from the Cesarean, but she missed out on a lot by not traveling through the birth canal, and so there are ways Ayurvedically that I can sort of boost her immune system and help her, especially because, we are vaccinating, although on a delayed schedule, but really, according to Ayurveda, children survive vaccinations, and you want to make sure that your child is as healthy as possible before going in to get any of the vaccines, that are being given today. And so with that, I've been starting, from the moment she was born, with Ayurvedic principles and Ayurvedic herbs, to make sure that she has a really, really strong immune system. But it's like, as a mother, and I've realized that, like, we're now healing, not actively healing, not because there's anything wrong, but it's a mutual kind of healing and back and forth. And I don't like the word journey, and I don't like to use it very often, but it's like that, you're on this similar trajectory. And
I like that trajectory. I use journey a lot. I like the trajectory.
I know, and it's, journey's a great word. I just, sometimes it gets overused for me. But so, and then my process is going even deeper now, being a student of this, very old medicinal system, is looking at these prepackaged brands of yoga, because what was really interesting to me, Bibi, is that I still get messages from people that don't want to practice Ashtanga yoga. They've been doing it anywhere from like 5 to 10 years. They don't want to practice and they don't want to practice anymore, but they don't know what to do. And that always surprises me, because I'm like, how can someone be practicing yoga every day for many years? 5 to 10 years is a good chunk of your life.
Yeah.
And not know how to sequence a yoga practice, and the truth is because that's not how yoga is meant to be taught. Yoga is truly meant to be taught individual. Your practice should be totally different than mine, not meaning that you're taught it at a different time, meaning that it should look totally different because, different background, history, psychological tendencies, both long-term and short-term, physiological tendencies, both long-term and short-term. There's so much to look at when we're designing yoga practices for ourselves and for other people. And I just realized that, like, it actually doesn't empower us as students to really learn yoga, because what is empowering is to, okay, I'm going through this is going to be the practice that I'm going to do now. 10 minutes or 30 minutes. Do you know what I mean? It's going to look different now. And then, 5 years down the road, okay, I'm going through this. Now this is what it's going to be. That's true empowerment. Learning how to adapt a set sequence it's not all that empowering. And it's not really having you be an active participant in your healing. And that's really what interests me, is like, how can you, Bibi, heal yourself and your family and your community? You know what I mean?
Right.
So that's been really huge for me, is stepping out of this sort of, and a girlfriend of mine put it really funny the other day. She's like, well, Ashtanga yoga is just kind of for like this like Western capitalist or consumer mindset, where like, here it is, like, you don't have to learn much. You don't have to really invest much. Not that it's easy, because it's not easy, but you know what I mean? It's just kind of like, okay, well, I just have to do this. I don't even have to believe that yoga will work. I guess that's one of the interesting things about Ashtanga yoga, is that you don't even have to believe that it works. Like, you're just going to get the benefits of yoga,
right?
But in the same way that you would. So, it's still, I guess, this like postpartum experience is still happening, and it's just kind of unraveling all of these layers, that and in combination with being in school.
Yeah.
And there's so much, there's still so much left to learn. And Artemis is, everyone says that their kid is their teacher, and it's so true. The moment I feel that I'm like, I've got this, the moment I get a little like cocky, she's like, push. she's like, try this on for size, and yeah, it's
yeah,
it's
I love,
humbling.
part of the reason why I do these interviews or started doing them, it's because I feel like, to me, my experience was very transformative, and by no means is it any close to your story, because I never had those experiences, but I have felt a very big transition in my relationship to yoga. And what you just said about, you're given this structure, and then if you want to kind of move away from it, what do you do? And I feel like in my own experience, it's been, and I want to try to make it relatable to anybody, even if they're not practicing Ashtanga, but it's been this, oh, I've been doing this thing for so many years. And because I've had benefits from it, because I was healing, coming from a different place, and I had to heal something that required that structure. But I never paused and thought, like, why is it working for me? And, like, never did I step on the mat every day and be like, am I choosing to do this practice from a place of freedom, or am I locking myself into another box and like covering what the issue that was there before in another costume, and continuing to develop that problem but in a different costume. And then I feel like pregnancy and birth was like, let's rip off the costume and look at the problem at the root, whether you're ready for it or not. And then once the baby comes out, welcome to this facing it face to face, because your kid is like a daily reminder of that. And like you said, you want to show up for them from a place of truthfulness, and and you want to be transformed by them so that you can help them grow with the yamas and niyamas are the yoga. So you want to build a foundation from them that's based on these morals, right? Of truthfulness,
Yeah.
especially. And so I really appreciate you sharing this story. And if there's women that are listening that are not Ashtangis, I think I love that the power of birth, of like just being able to throw you into seeing your life that's been up to now, and like, how are you going to deal with that once you're in this raw state, and how are you going to allow for the transformation, the opportunity of transformation that it's given you, and yeah, how are you going to deal with it? And you're such a beautiful example of that, of like really having taken it like with full courage and like full fire, of like, I'm going to look at it in the face, and I'm willing to change my whole life upside down to give my daughter an opportunity to live differently. And I love that, because we all need to break free of our jails, whether that's like we've put ourselves in it or someone else has and we've allowed it. It's everybody goes through that in some way or form, and like, how wonderful to be able to be freed of that. And and if you don't know what to practice, just don't practice anything for a while. Just be, like, I feel like that was my journey. I just had to stand there and be like,
just yeah,
nothing.
I did that too. I was like, what am I doing?
Nothing. And all that I was like, oh my God, is my body going to fall apart? Am I going to change physically? Am I going to change mentally? Am I going to turn into a terribly reactive person? And like, no, you survive. And then you all this opportunity arises of freedom and creativity and, expression. And you're such a beautiful example of that.
Thanks. You're very generous.
No, it's true.
Yeah. Well, before having Artemis and me too, I remember my husband and I having a conversation about retirement. And I said, well, I'm always going to teach Ashtanga Mysore until I die. I will never retire from that. And at the time, I really meant it. It was really coming from my heart. And then I never thought in a million years that, it wasn't just Artemis, it was me too. It was my conversation with the victim. It was, all of it, that, I'm thankful to all of it, to all of them, you know, yeah, it's been a wild ride, and it's going to continue to be a wild ride. She starts school in August. So yeah, nonstop. The roller coaster's on its way.
Right. Yeah. What is your take? Like, what would you like whoever is watching this, from whatever path of life they're coming from? What do you want to tell them?
You mean for women that are
watching this because they're trying to like either navigate postpartum, they're standing on their mat, or they're in their running shoes, or in front of a rock, or on a sailboat, wherever they're standing in front of their computer trying to do work and feeling like, I am not this anymore. Or a woman that's coming to see because she's scared of birth and she needs to hear other women's stories. Like, what do you want them to know?
Oh, I want them to stop comparing themselves to other pregnant women. I think that was, you know, I tried rock climbing while I was pregnant. I mean, I've been rock climbing for, you know, I started when I was 17, and, you know, I saw all these really pregnant rock climbers, and I was like, that is so badass. Like, I'm totally going to do that. And then I couldn't, like, at all.
Yeah.
I tried, and it was a horrible feeling. And so I think we have all these ideas of what our pregnancy will be like, and you just need to be open for anything and everything, and try and build a little bit of a village, you know, around you. Even if some family members, you know, they can't drive you too crazy, but if you can have a pair of extra hands or two around the house, that'll be incredibly helpful, you know. And don't compare yourself to other women. Don't go on Instagram looking at other women.
Turn off your Instagram for a couple of months.
When you're sleep deprived, don't buy any sleep training programs. Like, don't do it. And there is no one way to do it. I mean, the advice that we received we did not sleep train, but, you know, none of the advice worked. We found a way that worked for our family. You know, I started becoming like authors and bloggers or influencers that are really smart, very resourceful women. None of their advice has worked any step of the way, you know, from sleep training to teaching how to brush teeth, to potty training, to even, you know, we just went through this like hitting phase, you know, how to deal with that. So it's like, you know, I at first was clinging too closely to this advice. Being a first-time mom, it's understandable. So do that as a general guidance, but realize that you're going to find your own way. You and your family are going to find your own way, you know, and to be really compassionate with yourself, because you are that baby's mom for a reason. And that's exactly how it should be. Like, that's exactly what should be happening.
I love that. Thank you. What a beautiful way to close to. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Bibi.
So Magnolia, tell us how, if someone wants to find out more about you or your work, how would they do that?
Well, I don't have anything now. I took down my school website and stuff. But so now I'm not on Facebook. I'm just on Instagram as under Magnolia _Magnolia Zuniga. That's how active I am on that. And I'm in school full time, you know, I'm really busy. So I'm not really, I mean, I do post stories and things like that, but I'm not as active as I would like to be. I would like to be putting more informative information on there as I go through school. You know, I'm learning so much, but I'm also just kind of like really in it. Like, I have a big midterm coming up.
But maybe
but eventually,
like 2 years down the line, and so if they went on your Instagram, maybe they might find your website or something.
Yeah, I mean, eventually it'll be magnoliazuniga.com, and my internship starts officially in November, when I can start seeing people, and it's all going to be under, you know, supervised by an Ayurvedic doctor. But then I don't actually finish school for another few years. So, but a website will be up and running around the end of this year.
Okay.
So, yeah.
I'm very excited for you. And I might be reaching out to you too.
Yes.
Yeah.
I need guinea pigs.
Yeah, I will
The
be
best
a guinea
way.
pig. I love all this stuff. I'm a geeky student of it all, but
Yay.
yeah, I would love that. Well, thank you so much for being on here. I truly appreciate, all your stories and honesty and being willing to share them with
Thank
this
you.
virtual village, whoever
Yes.
might be watching it.
Okay.
So thank you so much.
Thank you.